All right, we are joined this afternoon by crew chief of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Mustang Dark Horse of Joey Logano. It's crew chief Paul Wolfe. If you've got a question for Paul, by all means, raise your hand. We'll get to all the questions that we can in the time we've got with Paul. And Paul, I guess I'll start because we were at Iowa last weekend and they were talking to Joey about this weekend in New Hampshire. And he says, well, it's probably Paul Wolfe's best racetrack. So I didn't really start running that well until Paul became my crew chief. So is there some kind of secret or is there some kind of magic that you have at New Hampshire that he would say something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think in general, just our short track setups, I guess, or maybe philosophy, has just always worked well, right from back in the days when I worked with Brad. I think that was always a strength, and then we were able to adapt that to Joey and find some things. And I think he's studied a lot over the years as well, even having Brad as a teammate and understanding some of his techniques and whatnot. And I think we've been able to, like I said, carry maybe some of that same type of approach and things that have worked in the past. And Joey was able to adapt, and we've had good success. I mean, even as you look at the past couple of years with the next gen car and at times when we struggle for speed on mile and a halfs or road courses. We always kind of have our short track program to fall back on, and we've been able to find some success there, or at least have good solid runs. And I think that's obviously continued for us this year as well. So definitely with what we've been able to do there the past couple of years, really excited about getting back there this week and continuing to build off of our strong runs. Obviously, our teammates have been able to find victory lane on the short tracks, so we're hoping it's our turn this weekend.
All right, we've got a lot of questions. Everybody online just about has a question. So what I'd like to do is if we can start with everybody with one question, we'll get through everybody and then we'll circle back for any follow-ups, okay? Because I'd like to get everybody online at least be able to ask one question. So with that being said, let's kick it off with John Newby. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. So, Paul, I was curious with just the improved speed across the board for Penske. Can you give me a sense, is it more of you guys have discovered something with the car, or is it just more comfort with the dark horse, 17 weeks into the season?
I think it's more what we've been able to put together with the short track aero package, I guess. I don't, I guess Phoenix was early in the season, right? And I wouldn't say we were great there, but honestly, I have to keep kind of going back to the test opportunity we had at North Wilkesboro early in the spring, and really capitalizing and making the most of that, and obviously Joey gets a lot of credit for that. I mean, we put in, I think, almost 900 laps at North Wilkesboro. Obviously it was a good year test, but we were able to work through a lot of questions we had and things we wanted to look at, and gathered a lot of information that we've been able to apply to these recent short tracks. So I don't know that it's anything related to the dark horse specifically. I think it's more of just what we've been able to find with the short track package. Obviously quite a bit different aero package than than the other tracks.
Perfect. I appreciate the insight.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to Logan Morris. Hello, Logan.
Hey, Paul, how are you? Thanks for the time. Look, you mentioned that your Penske teammates have found victory lane and you're hoping it's your turn. What kind of confidence does that give you that they have found victory lane after some slow starts and struggles for Ford as a whole, but especially Team Penske?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's great for the company. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, as the 22 team, we want to win too, but I think Roger's always expressed this over the years. When one team wins, we all win. And I think the way we're structured, and specifically as well as we've been working together with the 12 team here recently, we wanted to be the team spraying the champagne the other night, but hey, you got to look at it and know that we were a part of that in a way, and helping build the program and the way we all work together. So definitely gives us confidence. Like I said, if we can't be in victory lane, there's nothing better than seeing one of our team cars. And it gives you another data point of, okay, we're on the right path here. The things we've been working on are correct, and we'll keep massaging on it as we move forward to Loudon this weekend.
Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Logan, thank you. Let's go on to Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Jim.
Kind of follow up. You mentioned the test that you guys did at North Wilkesboro. You guys have a different tire combination at New Hampshire this year than last year, but I believe it's the same, or one of the same tires you ran at North Wilkesboro and what you just ran at Iowa. And considering how good you guys were at both places, do you feel fairly confident from that experience that will give you kind of maybe a little legs up this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, good question. And I've said this over the years, like anytime there's a tire change in our sport, whether it's a construction, compound, big stagger changes, like those things can really affect your setup, obviously, quite a bit. So with that being such a big factor, yeah, I think as we've seen the consistency now on this tire for us and what we've been able to do in the past at New Hampshire, like I said, I'm excited to get to the track. I think we've got as good a shot as anybody to get to victory lane this weekend. So obviously the loads, as we talk about, our short track package and the things that have worked for the 22 team and, Team Penske on the short track, you're making small changes, because, Iowa to New Hampshire, the loading, the size of the track's a little different. I guess what makes, as you focus on a certain part of the corner, what makes success at Loudon versus Iowa, is a little different. So you're fine tuning off from a base setup and settings in a race car. But when you find something that works, until there is a big change in the tire or aero package, man, I've found over the years, you can really just kind of take it from one track to the next and kind of do your offsets or your changes for the different loads or speeds, and you can continue to have success with it. So really optimistic about this weekend with all that being said.
Thanks, Paul.
You bet.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go to Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic. Hello, Jordan.
Hey guys, appreciate your time, Paul. Looking ahead at the kind of stretch run here to end the regular season and where you guys are at in the playoffs, are you feeling, what's your confidence level of making the playoffs based on where you're at now, combined with the fact that it seems like Penske and Ford is kind of on the upswing?
Well, I think that's good. I mean, it gives everyone confidence, right, as we move forward. I think as we started this stretch here, I guess you want to look back a month ago after, we won the All-Star race at Wilkesboro, having a lot of confidence in where we're at with this aero package, as well as short track setup stuff. When Joey and I sat down, I said, this is our stretch. This is probably going to be some of our best opportunities to get a win and get ourselves locked in. With that being said, unfortunately, we haven't been the one in the winner's circle. It's been our teammates, and now they're both, locked in. But I still like what's coming up here. Obviously, this weekend, Richmond's still on the schedule here before the playoffs. And then I look at, obviously Daytona, the Speedway program with all the Fords has been strong. Obviously, a lot of stuff out of our control there, but no, that's a realistic opportunity. And then there's some racing there, just being honest, that I'm not really sure how it's going to go. Nashville's been a little bit of a struggle for our company with this next gen car. With that being said, I think the way Iowa turned out and the speeds and the loads and the things we learned from Iowa, it's not extremely different from Nashville. It kind of falls maybe somewhere in between the intermediate and kind of Iowa now. So there's maybe some takeaways from Iowa that we can apply at Nashville. But I think as a whole, Team Penske, I think our biggest area for improvement is going to be the high speed tracks, and we've got Pocono, Indy, Michigan. Those are the tracks that we have to figure out to feel like we're going to be realistic contenders. It's good to see that RFK has been able to find that speed on those tracks. I think obviously that's been their strength, and on the flip side of that, I don't think they've been as good on the short track stuff as we have. So with that being said, we know it's there. We've seen Brad and the 17 bunch be able to have speed on those type of tracks. So we're going to continue to try to find something there. And listen, we're not going to change what we're doing. I mean, we go to every racetrack trying to be the best we can and put the best car out there. Obviously, we're not in the situation we want to be in with below the cut and where we've been at on some of these tracks speed wise. But we're going to continue to work, and hopefully, it's going to put us where we need to be.
All right, let's move to Dr. Deandra. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Paul. Thank you
there.
for your time.
Yes.
I'd like to follow up on Jim's question and ask you to get into the weeds a little bit about how New Hampshire and Iowa are different. Just in terms of the corners, what are we looking at in terms of differences of loading? And how big a change do you have to make to the car in order to adapt it from what you learned at Iowa to New Hampshire?
Yeah. So obviously, like I said, quite a bit different loading and speed. Obviously, Iowa being, quite a bit faster. I would say it's our fastest, what we consider short track, flat track, mid corner speeds you'll see. And to go along with that, the loads were pretty high. All the manufacturers did a wheel force test there a month or so back. And I think as we got back to the track, I think we saw even higher speeds, and along with that goes the higher loading, which I think is all part of a lot of the tire failures we saw in Iowa. In practice, obviously got a little better in the race. There still were issues, and essentially that's just very hard on those tires. And so to go along with that, there's quite an air pressure change to account for that loading. Obviously, shocks and springs could change as well, just depending on your aero platform you're targeting. But yeah, I think guys try to get aggressive. There was speed in the lower air pressures as well as cambers at Iowa. Obviously, bit some teams, ours being one of them, the 2-car. But I think we all learned from it and got much more conservative for race day, and were able to do those longer runs. Green flag runs without issue. So I think as we look to Loudon, we'll you'll look to guys probably adjusting back down to more aggressive cambers and air pressures to find that grip on the the flatter track at New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's time for Claire B. Lang. Hello, Claire. Go ahead, Claire. Unmute.
Hold on.
There we go. I got you.
All right. There's been a good stack of races already this season in which we've observed and chatted and talked about. How would you observe and assess the first part of the season so far? What have you noticed either amongst the manufacturers, but also in the sport in general, so far bringing us to where we're at now, headed to New Hampshire?
Well, I think the parity more than anything. I think we've continued with this car each year. Guys really fine tuning and dialing it in, and I think I've spoken this earlier in the year. But at times, when you feel like you're struggling because you're running 22nd, you're really not as far off as it may seem. Or what you're accustomed to. A history of a bad day, for a Team Penske car may have been running 15th, right? Well, with as close as the field is now, that gets magnified, and you have to be perfect. And when I say perfect, I mean not only from just maybe a philosophy of a setup approach, but even the simple thing is just a balance, being around a wedge or something like that, or a pound of air pressure. The difference that can make from, running position in a race now is unbelievable from what you're used to over the years. So to go along with that, I think just the level of consistency you need on pit road to be able to make positions as well. I think we've seen, that get to a whole nother level, a lot of consistent 8-second pit stops. We've got to continue to push there to keep up on pit road. But yeah, I mean, everyone's just running so close. And, at times, as we talk about strategy and those types of things and how to pass and, whether we think racing's good or bad at certain tracks, I mean, it should be expected with where we've gone to with this car, with the box that all the teams are in now. And guys figuring it out. I mean, everyone in the garage has made it to this level because they're very talented, and yeah, maybe they didn't have it the first year, but each year they're eventually going to figure it out. So once everyone figures it out, and now you're down to the minute details, man, everyone's running so close. And frankly, it's hard at times. Just I'll use the 51 as an example. With Justin Haley. Like in the past years, you'd never even think if you were racing with him, you knew something was really wrong. But the fact of the matter is now those guys are good. All those guys in the back are good. And now they've got their cars close to where we're at, and you're going to have to race them. So it's just made it super competitive, and it's made it feel like days when you're off just a little bit, it feels like you're a mile off. So, it's all about the details right now. It's all I can really express on that.
Thanks, Paul, and good luck this weekend. All right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, time for Bob Pockris. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Paul, and as a driver, your two best tracks in Xfinity were Loudon and Iowa, or Loudon and Nashville. So I'm curious, does that help at all 20 years later?
That's a great question, Bob. I'm pretty removed from it now. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years already since I think the Busch race I ran there was 2004. I think I finished 12th, but we're doing this little the segment there with NBC this week, and they follow the crew and whatnot on the pit box. They were wanting some photos and whatnot of when I raced at New Hampshire, and I just pulled back up that race there I did, and just looking at the guys I was racing against there at New Hampshire is pretty crazy, with Harvick and Kenseth and Ron Hornaday. I mean, there was 48 cars that tried to make that race in New Hampshire that year, and so it was kind of neat to look back, because I haven't really done that a whole lot. You get so into what I'm doing now, those days are behind me. But I did take a minute this morning, and it was kind of cool to look back at that race I did there. And but the cars and the sport's changed so much now, it's hard for me to say that that has a big impact on what I do to our race car now. It is neat to have been around the racetrack and know what it feels like. But like I said, the cars are so much different these days that not a lot applies, I wouldn't think.
Thanks, Bob. Well, the anchor leg here being an Olympic year, we got the two NBC guys. So we'll finish it off with our NBC duo here. We'll kick it off first with Dustin Long. Go ahead, Dustin.
Thank you. Hey, Paul, traditionally, if a track was repaved, it just wasn't that great a racing because it was single file so fast they couldn't widen the groove. With some of the repaves we've seen lately, it seems like that's very different. What is changing with the repaves in this car, or why we're seeing things different, and is like the sport should be more open to the potential of repaving tracks as opposed to years ago when drivers begged and pleaded Atlanta never to be repaved.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we all, anytime we hear repave or we've heard repave here recently, it makes us all nervous, right? And you're right. I mean, the racing has been as good, or arguably you could say maybe better on a couple of these repaves. Now, the surface at Wilkesboro, the aggregate, the makeup of the asphalt they use there, was definitely quite a bit different to looking at it from what we're used to. It was much more coarse, and the way they're repaving them these days must be different because, like, even I remember going to that test, and typically when you do a repave test in the years past, man, it would take a day or two before the track would even begin to come in and have any type of grip. And in North Wilkesboro, man, that had grip like instantly. And I think like from run 2 of the test, I don't know that we really picked up speed from the track surface gaining grip other than just changes we made to our race car. So the grip is like there kind of instantaneously. Maybe that has something to do with the car as well. I think that's obviously a big factor in the tire, from the repaves of old with the old generation car and the 15-inch tire and all that. So maybe it's a combination. I think as you look at the groove getting wider, and I think these cars, without all the big side force in them, I think you can run on the outside of someone a lot better, the right side of them. I think that's something that the drivers comment about a lot. Or getting to the outside is much more doable with this car. And then I think both Wilkesboro and Iowa have that progressive banking, the best I understand. So I think that helps make that top groove work as well. So definitely encouraging. And yeah, I mean, at this point, it'd be hard to say it couldn't work at other tracks as well that are in need of the repave. I think another piece of that too, Dustin, you know, and we talked in length about this a little bit last week, but the whole strategy side of it, although we don't have tire fall off, you have strategy from a different angle, right? And you saw it again at Iowa, right? The guys stayed 2 tires, a lot of different options there. Where when you talk about going to a Richmond, which is wore out, and most of the drivers say that's what they like, they think that's good racing, you got to manage your car. That strategy for the most part is pretty straightforward. And there's no opportunity to mix anything up where, because you're coming in for tires no matter what. Iowa, Gateway, you know, that the no tire fall off definitely changes up the strategy game and makes it exciting from a different level, I think. So I don't know that have a strong opinion of what style I like, but I think I'm definitely a big strategy guy, and I enjoy that side of it. And especially if you don't have the best car, it still gives you an opportunity to try to mix something up and make something happen.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, Nate, take us home, my friend. You get the last question.
Thanks, Dan. Paul, first I should say thanks for doing the stage 2 embed at New Hampshire. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
But when I look ahead to Chicago, Shane Van Gisbergen won that race last year, and there was all this talk about, you know, the heel toe thing he does, the braking shifting techniques he used. And Joey Logano recently said a few times that he's looked at what SVG is doing and tried to ask himself if he could adapt to it. And he just concluded like he just doesn't have the time left in his career to like adapt to whatever SVG is doing to be good. So not to irk Dan here, but a 2-part question for you off of that. Have you talked to Joey about that? Did you guys like discuss, like, is there a way for him to change his driving style to mimic what SVG is doing to make him better at a street course like Chicago? And if not, if Joey can't do that, is there anything that you as crew chief, as team can do to kind of catch up to what SVG is doing?
We've definitely talked about it for sure. Obviously, Joey mentioned it, and I think he recognizes it. I think we all, I think as a sport, everyone, when you see someone come in and doing something different, you got to understand why and what what the benefits could be. But for sure, you know, Joey knows as well as anybody if it's something he can adapt to or not. That's obviously, I'm sure, years and years of doing something a certain way and muscle memory and all those types of things. That doesn't mean it couldn't be, you couldn't adapt to it, but I think the limited practice and testing these days make that even more difficult, because what you're going to figure it out in 20 minutes, you know, and it's like, are you willing to sacrifice a practice or a whole race weekend to try to learn this or get better at it? That's a tough one. The days of testing or the days of three practices in a weekend, I think that maybe makes that conversation different potentially. But yeah, I don't know that we've pushed it hard on him or anything. It's been talked about a little bit, but he's going to know best what he thinks realistically at this point in his career he can do. With that being said, you know, obviously we had some good cars. Us, the 2 and the 12 were very good at Sonoma, which was encouraging. With that being said, obviously the street course is a whole different animal. But I still do think there's some learnings from that weekend at Sonoma that us in the 12 will apply and hopefully get ourselves a little bit better. But obviously, second time around, all the drivers are gonna you know, be a lot better at the street course racing, and obviously SVG's just incredible on road courses in general, as he's been able to have the success he has. So he'll obviously still be a factor, but I think the gap will obviously, as good as the guys are in this series, will close up on that, and hopefully we can put together a little bit better car as well.
Great. Thanks much, Paul. Appreciate it.
You bet.